I don't know exactly what happened. It fell, there was a flash, like a short, and the breaker tripped. Or there was a flash, and then it fell, and the breaker tripped. I don't know, but all I know is that now it won't work. No matter which wires I unplug, as soon as I plug power into this circuit board, it trips the breaker. So I don't know how it went bad. I don't know if the fall shook something loose, or if when it fell, it shorted something out. What I think what happened is when it fell, some of these wires came unplugged, and it's not designed to run without all the wires hooked up. Like a car alternator, if you unplug the wires, you'll burn it up. So I think that's what happened. I can't get it to work no matter what I do with it. I brought the other one from home. I had made this one up for the littler motor for the wood lathe. I'm gonna hook it up and see if we can't get this one to work. So let's back up a little bit here. Years ago when I first started the Foundry, the ceramic shell material I was buying had to be mixed 24/7 or it will settle out and be unusable. So I experimented with all sorts of mixers, and I was using treadmill DC motors because one, they're cheap, and two, they're variable speed. And I tried to make various mixers, and none of them really worked very well. And then a new product came out that didn't require mixing, and that's what I went with and have been with ever since. So at the time, I just threw all this treadmill junk in a box where it's been sitting ever since. So I dumped all this stuff out. It's been several years. It was a little confusing, and it looks like I had 2 motors and 2 control panels. One of the control panels I could not get to work no matter what I did, and I believe it was the one for the smaller of the 2 motors. The other control panel was working. It had a whole lot of auxiliary stuff on it, which I later stripped. And the little control panel that did not work, I was planning on using my little homemade control panel that I got parts from eBay and instructions from YouTube, and I was going to use that control panel, which I made from partially the old computer parts and the stuff I bought on eBay, and put it together. So I got rid of a lot of junk. I did it with the motor running, so if I unplugged something and the motor killed, I knew it was important. I kind of knew what was going on. A lot of this was the tilt control for the treadmill, and then a lot of it was electronics, like to tell you your speed and your time and all that junk. Didn't need all that. So all I have left on this board is this little strip. This is the rheostat, or the variable speed controller. And I probably will cut this loose and install it a different way. I got the controller, and I got this thing, I forget what you call it, but it cleans up the voltage. So everything that's left I need. That's good. I got rid of some stuff. So I had a pretty good plan on how to mount this in a box and put an emergency shut-off switch and protect it in a fiberglass box. But that's all water under the bridge now because the thing don't work. So I'm back to my homemade one, which seems to work fine. Now this is the one I made, and it's opened up. It goes together in one piece, or one little box. The little box came from our old home computer that died. I purchased this. This is called a SCR voltage controller. It takes AC voltage and breaks it down to lower AC voltage. It's still AC, and it has a potentiometer. It has a knob on the front. So from there, you go to the bridge rectifier. That's this little square. That's this little square thing. This changes the AC voltage into DC voltage, and from here it can go directly to the motor, and that's as simple as it is. I will go through that choke before I get to my motor. Now these things have a tendency to burn up. They run hot, and I'm sure they're cheaply made. They're from China. So I added this, which has nothing to do with voltage control. This takes AC and turns it into 12 volt DC, and that's to power these little cooling fans, which came from the computer, and they're both 12 volt fans. So I have cooling air all the time, and there's actually a little bitty fan inside of here. So it's as simple as that. They're not known for being robust. They're not known for putting out clean power, but they do put out power, and they'll get you going for like 20 bucks. Except for this was another, I don't know, 10 or 12. So I'm gonna get, today my goal is to mount this some kind of way where the wires will be a little protected and I can get to the stop switch from the front without having to walk around. That's probably pretty dangerous what I've been doing. So I've got proper stone now for sharpening the cutting tools. The little cheap stone that came on my Ryobi bench grinder was going away faster than the metal was going away when I was trying to sharpen it. So let's put this on here and see if we can't get a good, decent cutting edge on one of these tools. So I'm using my 1/2 inch cutting bit with a 1/2 inch shim under it, and it's almost centered. You can see when I'm facing the end of the shaft, I'm leaving a little bit of nub, so it looks like it's, I don't know, a few sheets of paper low. Now when I use the 3/4 bits with the little shim, I'm way low, so I need to raise these up a little bit for cutting. First order of business is to cut this 1 3/4 inch shaft down to fit the 1 1/2 inch hub that came from the other boat shaft. I'm cutting stainless here, and I'm using the high-speed steel cutting bits that I ground myself, and I thought this was kind of hard, but this really cut really well compared to trying to cut these hardened steel flanges that are coming up. They kick my booty. The fit is so close now, I've switched to emery cloth and just taking off a little bitty bit so that hub will slide on here all the way. So now that the hub fit the shaft, I gave it a little bead of weld. That is so I can turn it down and it will fit this diameter better. And then I gave this a little bead of weld, and that's so I can turn it down and it'll fit the inside of the chuck a little better. So I'm gonna take the shaft off of the lathe. I don't wanna mess up the bearings. And I wanna do vertical welds, and I'm gonna weld this onto the shaft like for permanent. The hub is ready to weld on the shaft. I'm using a stick welder because I have some 3/16 rods, 316 rods. I think I should be using 309 rods, but I don't have any. But I'm not relying on the weld to keep this hub from falling off. It's a snug fit the whole way. The weld is just maybe to reduce some vibrations or whatever. It's a good fit, should be strong, should last forever. Flange is on the shaft and I'm spinning, and it's pretty doggone around before I even touch it. But I'm gonna touch this face and I'm gonna turn down my weld until it just fits into this hole. And then I'm gonna weld this plate to that hub and turn the other side. I'm looking forward to turning regular steel instead of stainless. I'm hoping it's a lot easier. So here my video footage is all screwed up, but these flanges are very, very hard. They dulled the high-speed steel bits almost instantly. I wasn't able to do anything with them. I thought I could anneal them maybe if I heated them up and with the torch and let them cool real slowly. It didn't seem to make any difference. So I ended up going back on what I said originally, that I wasn't going to get carbide bits, and I bought some carbide tools, and they were able to cut it, but they wore pretty quickly. Now they're a little cheap Chinese carbide, so I don't know what kind of carbide they are, but I went through a bunch of little bits, but gradually I was able to get this flange surfaced. So here we go, first try with the carbide bit. There we go. That's all I needed. So they go good for a little bit, but they dull pretty fast. They get really, really hot, send hot chips, and then they're back to where I was. They just quit cutting, and you got to get another one out the package. Luckily, they're very inexpensive. So I got this flange ready to install the other flange, and it's going to be welded. And my welder's dead right now. It's not letting gas go through, so I'm going to have to take a break from this and try to figure out what's going on with the welder. So my TIG torch, it would not give me any gas. This is mixed gas. And inside, right inside here, is the teeniest little 48 volt solenoid you've ever seen, and I couldn't see it. It's up underneath this platform right here. I spent the longest time trying to trace it down and find where the valve was. I thought it might have been in this thing here, but it wasn't. I took the tip apart thinking the valve might be in there, and I gave up and I called the local fix-it place, and he told me where it was. But he also told me that it's like 170 bucks and it takes 6 weeks to get. So I got lucky. I took it apart. It started working again. It may stop again, who knows, but if it quits again, I'm going to Granger's and buying a generic 48 volt solenoid valve for $18. I'm not going to spend that much money on a crazy one and wait so long to get it. So I'm ready to weld. I got my flange bolted up here. It is it's not perfectly flat on the back because I cut it with the grinder and a cutoff blade. I got it as straight as I can get it. I turned it around and I was measuring with the calipers between this little piece of steel I got clamped. And right now, this spot is the furthest out. So I'm gonna put a weld here, and then I'm gonna go around slowly loosen these clamps until it measures the same with the caliper, and I'm gonna weld it all the way around, and should be okay. I'm just trying to get where I don't have to take off too much when I'm trying to face it flat. Okay, I got 4 welds evenly spaced, and it looks it's pretty respectable. Go ahead and weld it out and turn that face flat, which may take a while. This is not a fast lathe. It's not overly powerful. Everything goes. So earlier in the video, or the last video, I said that because this flange had hammer marks on it, that it must not be very hard. Well, I was wrong on that point. And earlier in the video, I thought that the flange that came with the boat shaft was hard, and I was wrong on that point. This stuff is super hard. I tried different feed rates, different angles for the cutting tool, different spindle speeds, and no matter what I did, this thing just generated a huge amount of heat with minimal chip removal. And you know, I was committed at this point. I just powered through and kept replacing tips. It was frustrating. It was hot. I got oil all over the floor, which I should have put cardboard down, but I didn't. And I had a bunch of fires from the oil and the chips just catching on fire, but there was nothing there that a fire was going to hurt. So this took a long time. I could only advance the cut just a little bit at a time. So I probably did, I don't know, 20 or 30 passes before I got the flange low enough. Put in an hour or two this morning and moving really slow. This flange, this brake hub, whatever it was, no, it was a wheel flange, must be really, really hard because the chips come off red hot. They're catching on fire with the oil. They're dulling the little carbide inserts that I got, but we're making progress. A couple of more inserts and I should be done with this. Just slow go. The good stuff, the motor does not get hot. None of these bearings get hot. The shaft doesn't get hot. Everything's good. The lathe is not bolted down. It's just sitting on the table and it doesn't vibrate. It doesn't bounce around. So the only issue I'm having right now is trying to cut that face. I need about another 1/8 of an inch off of it. Ooh, perfect. I took a metric bolt with the right threads, cut it short, put it in the drill, spun it on the grinder to get a point on the end, and then I took the grinder and cut a shoulder on each side so I could get the needle nose pliers so it wouldn't get lost in that hole and I'd never be able to get it out. So I'm using that as a pointer or a marker and putting the chuck up on that center ring, and I can mark my holes, I think. I used the little pointy thing to scratch a mark in the blue tape, and I drilled a hole and put a bolt. And then I rotated it and put the bolt in this hole, and the pointy thing's right here, and I scratched the tape and I got my second hole. Now I'm going to do the same I'll put 2 bolts, and I'll use the pointy thing to scratch the 3rd hole, and that way I don't have to use a measuring device because I don't do that so well. So it worked with two of the 3 bolts in. I got a little scratch mark right here. That's from my last hole. It's kind of close to this other hole, which is unfortunate. I wasn't able to space them out any other way. So I'm gonna drill 1 more hole. Chuck is on, it's secure, but I have some serious run out. See the wobble? I'm gonna take the chuck back off and put the dial indicator on that face and see what's going on. Something's not quite right. It doesn't take much to throw a shaft off like this. So we'll go 1 step backwards. Okay, I'm measuring the face. It's going from 19 to 20 thousandths, so it's got a 1,000th difference. So that's not so bad, I wouldn't think. I'm going to turn the indicator and measure the outside face of this little lip, see what's going on there. So now I'm measuring the outside face, and it's jumping between 1.5, 1.5, 0.5, 1.5, 1. So the surface is a little rough, but it's not that bad. So I think it must have just been the way I had the chuck tightened down, because I was way more than 1,000th off on that end result. Unless this 1,000th can magnify itself that much, I don't know. So this isn't so bad. So I have found the crookedness, and I got it out. So now I have 1,000th on the top of this bolt. And if I scoot over here to the next bolt, I have a 1/2 thousandth. And if I scoot over here to the next bolt, I have 1.5. So I'm within 1,000th, or within 1/2 thousandth, within 1,000th all the way around. But the problem is, now these bolts don't all have the same torque on them. I had to change the torque on them to get this thing to sit flat, and I don't like that. So I'm gonna take the chuck back off. I'm gonna drill a hole right next to these bolts that hold the chuck on, and I'm gonna put a jacking screw, and that way I can pull in with this bolt and I can push out with the jacking screw. And so even if I need to loosen this bolt a little bit to get the chuck straight, I can take up the slack with a jacking bolt, and that way everything ought to be copacetic. Let's see what it looks like. Oh yeah, that blue tape is deceiving. Let's get that tape off. This looks a whole lot better. Now look how much better that looks. So I think with the jacking bolts, I'm going to have a good, very well aligned system. There was nothing easy about those 3 holes. I had to sharpen the bit at least 3 times for each hole. That metal is just so hard, it would just dull them. I broke a tap, and somehow or another I was able to get it out. And then I couldn't tap them. I had to drill them. You're supposed to drill a number 7 drill bit for a 1/4 x 20 tap. I had to drill oversized because the metal was just so hard. Couldn't get the tap in, but it's done. I got it. We'll put the chuck back on, put some jacking screws from the back, and maybe this will be it. And life got in the way of finishing this video totally. I was hoping to get the chuck permanently bolted on there. Went home for lunch and never made it back. So I'm using the clips, the video clips I already have. I'm finish this up, and we'll have to finish it next week. But anyway, thanks for watching.